Hi there, thanks for tuning in. In this video, we're going to look at how to make HTTP requests inside of our Flutter applications. We'll be using the HTTP plugin, and as you can see here on screen, we do have an article over at alligator.io. I've posted a link for this inside of the description so you can follow along. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. And with that said, let's jump into creating a brand new Flutter project for us to use inside of this video. Let's go ahead and type Flutter create, and we'll call this Flutter HTTP. Of course, if you're adding this to your actual application, you don't need to create a new app at this stage. When that has completed, we can cd into that directory and open it up inside of VS Code. So let's cd into Flutter HTTP and open it up like so. The first thing that we're going to do at this point is head over to pubspec.yaml, and inside of the dependencies, we'll go ahead and add the HTTP plugin. So we'll say HTTP, and I'm just going to put a colon at this stage. That will get the latest version for HTTP, but do be aware that there could be API changes to this, which then of course breaks the video. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and open this up on our device or on an emulator. I'm going to use an emulator for this, so we'll go to the debug pane. We'll firstly go to main.dart, then we'll hit run and debug, and we'll start the iOS simulator. So we should now be able to see the counter application, which of course is the standard for a new Flutter app. We'll be removing that in a moment. For now, we'll go over to lib and we'll create a new file called http_service.dart. We'll make a new class called http service. And the first thing that we're going to do is define our URL. I'll be using the JSON placeholder API for this. Simply gives us a brand new JSON API that we don't need to set up with some dummy data. So we'll say final string posts URL, and we'll set that equal to the API, which is at jsonplaceholder.typecode.com/posts. Now you should replace this with whatever API you're currently using, but for the tutorial we'll use this. We'll then make a new function called getPosts. And this will be an async function, and it will return a future which contains a list of post. Now at the moment we don't have a post, so we will need to create that. So let's make a post_model.dart. We can then say class post, and this will be a simple post which contains things like a user ID, an ID, a title, and a body. For now we'll go back to our HTTP service, and we'll simply import that. That will get rid of our current error, and we can continue with this function. We will of course go back to the posts model in a moment. Next up, we'll say response res equals to await get, and we want to get the posts URL. You'll see that I need to import response from HTTP, and when we do that, we also get get. As the name implies, this does a HTTP GET request on that particular URL, and the response, when we say if res dot, has a variety of different things, such as status code. We can say if the status code is equal to 200, this essentially means that this was a successful request. We can get the body back, which we are going to classify as a list dynamic, by using JSON decode, and that'll be the res.body. We then want to take that body and get the posts from that as an actual post inside of our app. So let's build the post model a bit more before we take this any further. So we know just from looking at the API documentation that a post has 4 different fields. We have a final int user ID, a final int ID, a final string title, and a final string body. We can then hit command dot to create a constructor out of this, and I'm going to make these named but required parameters. We can do that by adding these brackets like so, and then for each element we'll say required. We'll pull in foundation.dart for this, and we'll simply add it to each one of the items inside of the constructor. We then need a way to get the JSON response and turn that into a post. Now you can do this very easily with something called JSON serializable, and we will look at that in a future tutorial, but for now, let's simply make it ourselves. We'll make a new factory function, which says post.fromJSON. That will give us a map of string dynamic, which we'll name as JSON. From this, we can return a post, and that post will contain things such as our user ID, our body, our ID, and title. Of course, we don't want these things to be null, so we'll simply take the JSON, we'll pass the user ID, and we'll cast this as an int, and we'll go ahead and do this for each element. So for the body, we'll take the JSON, we'll get body, and this is a string. We'll do the same for ID, that is an int, and the title, which is of course a string. Now we have a way to parse the JSON response and turn that into an actual post inside of our app. So we can go back to our HTTP service now. We can take that body and we can say list post, and we'll say posts is equal to body.map. So we'll map over each item. We'll say that is dynamic item, and we'll return a post.fromJSON passing in that item. Because the map returns an iterable, we'll need to say .toList at the end. That will give us a list of posts, which we can then return by saying return posts. If we can't get the posts, we'll add a very crude else clause into this, which says throw can't get posts. So we now have the ability to serialize posts from our API. We've got the function to get posts. Now let's make the ability to show the post on screen. So let's make a new page called posts.dart. We'll say class posts page extends stateless widget. We'll pull it in from material.dart. I'm going to hit command dot on this posts page to create the build function. Our build function can return a scaffold with an app bar, which has the title of text posts, and body for now can simply just be a container. We can head over to main.dart and we can remove the majority of things inside of here. So everything under my app we will delete. We'll then replace home with posts page like so. And when we save the file, we should now be able to see posts here on screen. We'll also get rid of that debug banner by removing debug show checked mode banner, setting it to false. Inside of our posts page, we can make ourselves a new final HTTP service, which we will need to import. We'll set that equal to a new HTTP service. And then because this is a future and it's inside of our build method, we'll use the FutureBuilder. The FutureBuilder allows us to take a future and then build an appropriate set of widgets depending on the current state. So we'll say future, the HTTP service.getPosts. That returns us, of course, a list of posts. And right now you'll see that, of course, if we save the file, it says builder cannot be null. And that's fine. So our builder will be the build context and an async snapshot of list post. We'll call that snapshot. And just for now, we will return a circular progress indicator. You'll need to make sure that you import your posts model. And by doing so, we can see we now have this very simple circular indicator. That doesn't, of course, show the posts. We can also center that if we want to. In order to show the posts, we'll say if the snapshot has data, then we want to return a different thing. So we'll just make the list of post called posts, and that'll be equal to the snapshot.data. And within our snapshot, we'll say return list view, because we want to show a list of these posts, with the children equal to posts.map. That will give us a post, which we'll reference as post. We'll return a list tile for each one of the posts, with the title equal to the text of post.title. And at the end of that, we'll say toList. Make sure that you don't capitalize the P by accident there, because that will be trying to reference it as a static element. And when we do that and we fix that error, we can see we have the title for our posts. We could display some extra information if we wanted to, such as adding a subtitle, maybe with the post.id. When we add a toString to that, we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and the list continues. So here we are now building each post. What if we wanted to select a post and see information about that post? Well, we could create a get method for this again to look at the particular post by ID, but I think this is very, very simple because we basically would just be copy pasting the same code that we've done. So what we'll do is on tap, we'll simply pass this post over to the next page without having to do any sort of HTTP request. We don't expect this data to have changed, and we really have no other reason to get that post again from the API. So let's make an onTap event by saying onTap, and when the user taps this, we'll say navigator.of. We'll pass through the context. We'll say push, and we want to push a material page route with the builder of context. And here we need to pass in our new page. So we currently don't have that page, so let's go ahead and create it over at lib, and we'll call this posts detail.dart. Or let's even rename this to post detail. Then we can say class post detail extends once again a stateless widget because we have no inherent state that we're managing on this page. And we want to return a scaffold. That scaffold has an @bar with a title, and we'll set the title to the current post.title. So we will need to add a final post. We'll need to import the post from the model, and then we'll create a constructor for this field. We'll also set this required by adding the @required annotation. And when we do that, we can go ahead and add a text which contains the post.title inside of the @bar here. And if we go back to posts.dart, we can pass through the post detail page. We will need to import that and set the post equal to post. Now, anytime somebody clicks on a post from the list, we should be given the next post detail page. So let's select this one, number 57, and we can see the title here is the @bar title. Let's now add a quick body just so we can see the body of this post by saying body. We'll add a single child scroll view. It's most likely not necessary because this card is going to be quite small, but yours might be larger. So we'll simply add a child which contains a padding. Perhaps add some edge insets.all of 12. We will also make this constant because this won't change. And the child of our padding will be, of course, a card. The card will have a column inside of it, and the children of the column will simply be a list tile which contains everything about the post, such as the title, the ID, the body, and the user ID. What if we wanted to delete this post? Well, that would require a delete request being pushed to the HTTP service. So let's make a delete post function. That'll be a future of void. It will return nothing. And we'll call this one delete post. It will take an int ID. It will also be async. And we'll say response res is equal to await delete. We'll pass in the post's URL. And we can do that with this $sign here, /$ID. So that will simply be this JSON placeholder.typecode.com/posts/x. We could then say if the response.statuscode is equal to 200, well then we know that this was in fact deleted. Now for good measure, we should probably put this inside of a try catch and do some appropriate error handling here. But for now, we just want to display deleted inside of the console. And inside of our posts detail page, we can go ahead inside of the app bar, or perhaps we could even make a floating action button, which has the child of an icon dot delete, and the onPressed to this will simply be http service dot, and in order to use that, we'll need to of course go to the top and make a final http service is equal to a new instance of that. We'll remove const from this now, and we can say http service dot delete post, and we'll need the post dot id. We'll set await to that, and we'll make this an async function, and then afterwards we'll do navigator dot of context pop. That would then allow us to click this button. That would go ahead, delete the post, and then of course we would go back one page. Little example app, it still does appear because we haven't then fetched in new posts, but we can see that it was deleted. So like I said, this is quite fragile at this point, because if I turned off the Wi-Fi, like so, and I clicked delete, we would get an exception because we aren't using a try catch here. We are having a failed host lookup, and we aren't actually catching this exception appropriately. However, I do have another video coming soon on exception handling in Flutter where we will look at this in more detail. So stay tuned for that. And thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you've got something useful from it. We looked at how to get posts, how to delete posts, and of course there's other methods too, such as post and put and so on. But this should allow us to have at least a very simple read and delete application using the JSON placeholder API. If you'd like me to cover anything else, let me know inside of the comment section below. And until then, I'll see you very soon in my next video.